And I ain't hit no drop in a minute. No, I'm about my business.
Rappers Got Podcast, episode 19. This is your host, Diggy
Bailz Pagliacci.
And today we wanted to talk about the creative process, how you write, what forms of writing you do outside of music.
Mm-hmm.
To start with us, how did you begin writing? Was it in song structure, or were you more doing like poetry? What was your writing?
I started writing. I was pretty young too. I started writing R&B songs. I just wanted to be an R&B singer. Then I realized that I was kind of unattractive and I hit puberty. So then I kind of lost my high notes. But I started like writing songs in like a form of like a love ballad at first. So I think that's really my first interaction with writing songs would go. But I've always been like a good writer as far as like English or whatever the case maybe we was taking into school. I just loved writing novels and essays and everything. It was always easy for me.
Okay, so so you've always written as music though. Like when you started actually writing your own stuff, it was always in music form.
Yeah, I never wrote like any like poetry, like
See, I wrote poetry. Like that was like I started writing poetry, and it wasn't far after that I like started writing music.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It kind of happened at the same time, but I definitely started with poetry in like English classes and stuff. I was writing poetry, and what was funny is like I would like take rap lines.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll take like a 50 Cent line and like throw it in the middle of the poem, and the teacher would be like, "Wow, it's so deep."
It's so deep. It's so insightful.
Wow, for a 10-year-old, you really have a lot of insight.
Was you doing this thing when I speak like this? When you were performing,
I was doing like slam poetry. I was more like looking to like bag girls.
Hey, listen, that's the way
poetry does it, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the way
poetry does it.
And then the shit don't have to really make sense, and it doesn't have to rhyme. So it's way easier sometimes than music. Technically,
poetry is also like it's a lot on perception.
Yeah,
it's not so like face value. Like you could read a poem and it could be like taken 10 different ways. So it's cool. I like poetry. Even till now, like if there's a dope like poem book, I could still mess with that.
I like the whole concept of just snapping my fingers. That stuff, you know.
I think that's called Tourette's.
That's probably for like the ASMR people right there with the snaps.
I hate that shit. The whispering shit.
Yeah, they probably just got turned on by that though, man.
I'm eating
very lightly.
All right, so I think I started writing music at the age of like 10. And at the time, I didn't grasp the idea that you can't take lines from other people's songs. So that's how I started. I started like, I would write one line of mine, or I would write like a bunch of lines, and I would take a dope line from a different song and I would like throw it in there to try to like make it sound cool. But it took a little while for me to like comprehend the idea of like original thought, and like everything has to be like from your perspective in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And even, I mean, from the people I was inspired by growing up, like Wayne was huge when we were younger.
Of course.
And so like Kanye, like all those people, like I think that I was heavily influenced by the way that they wrote songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say that I would necessarily like wrote word for word what they were saying, but I definitely had like them in mind while I was writing.
Yeah, because like even for me, like when I started like really writing rap music, it just kind of basically sounded like I was just going for the either the Drake or Big Sean punchlines, whoever created whatever the flow was, and just trying to just get those punchlines and make them so witty or whatever the case may be. Because that's what I was listening to at the time, and that's what I kind of wanted to be like. So that's how like that's where I started too, just like kind of copying in a sense.
I did the same thing. Like when I used to record freestyles over it, because when we were coming up, like there wasn't just all this access to like beats, like original beats.
Nah.
So like we had LimeWire and we had BearShare and all these different downloading platforms, and we would download beats that were like, you know, a artist who was actually on a major label's beats that would just be up. You download them and then you rap over them.
Just instrumentals, that's it.
Right, that's all you had access to. So like, you know, I think it took a long time for me to start rapping on shit with my own voice and my own like swag. Like at first, I know every time that I would do like an instrumental, like if it was a Wayne instrumental, I sounded like Wayne. If it was a Tupac instrumental, I tried to sound like Tupac and have the cadence, and you know. So it takes a long time before you start to like really come to who you are as an artist.
Yeah, because like I I think I remember the first time that I actually did a song that was like different than like regular beat. It was a song called GPA. I had just graduated college. I had like a 3.5, so I felt for some reason I could translate
damn.
that to a rap song. I did actually turn it into a rap song, but it was just kind of weird that was where my mindset went. But it was so different, but it was like, okay, this is me starting to just find myself and try to figure out how I'm separating. I stopped leaving. I mean, I left the instrumentals alone. And I was like, let me just focus on finding like regular beats. So this is around the time I was in college. Before that, it was still instrumental. Sound like this rapper, sound like that rapper.
I also didn't have money. Like when SoundClick started and there was access to beats
Mhm.
and I saw those lease prices, when you're like 17, 16 years old, like you don't have
I'm not paying
that 20 to just throw at a producer for a beat and now you don't even know where to record it. You know what I'm saying? So like,
especially when LimeWire was free.
right, and that's what I'm saying. So like you'd find that beat because you're like, they're not gonna sue me for rapping on this beat.
Nope.
Like I can't rip this person's beat offline, so I have to find these instrumentals and rap over them. So and it also helped that at that time there was like a big boom in like the mixtape circuit where everyone was like rapping on other people's beats.
Yeah, that's
so
all
it just
did.
fit in, you know. But back to writing. When did you start writing in your own perspective? Writing as yourself and not as like what you thought you had to write like.
8 months ago. It was about a ripe 8 months ago. Yeah, basically 8 months ago.
That was a tough one for me. You know, coming up, especially being from like a suburban area, you think that like that's not the story.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like even if you had a rough life coming up there, you still think like, nah, it's not enough cred. Like I need to have more of a rough story.
Yeah, I gotta have a rugged edge on me.
And I think you forget, like even as whether you're a suburban dude or you're straight up from the hood, like just because you're from the hood doesn't mean that you had like the hardest story of all time.
Definitely not.
Some people just lived regular ass lives and just came up and they weren't involved in like shootings and fucking gang violence. Like that's all like fabricated stuff that's in movies.
Mhm.
And there's mad regular people that just had regular lives coming up. So like, I don't think that the person who's in the hood and the person who's in a suburban area have different access to writing. And I think now it's more acceptable.
Yeah.
When we were coming up, it wasn't. You know what I mean? If you were rapping and you were from like a suburban area, it was like, yo, like you swear you're from the hood.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just didn't understand the concept of like, yeah, you can make music no matter where you're from geographically.
And I think sometimes it's just like the lines get blurred because it still even happens to this time when people like, oh, they may create music like, oh, they've been from the suburbs. Like even like take for example, random thing like I think Dave Chappelle said, I know it's not music related, but he's like from the suburbs, but everybody thinks that he's like from the hood or something just based off of like the content that he provides. But it's like even sometimes when you have certain content, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily have the hardest life. You don't have to be in those situations. Sometimes it's just being a person that's somewhere and noticing everything that's happening around you and being able to make something out of that. Even for me, my life wasn't super gangsta. I wasn't on the streets all the time, but I grew up in the environment. But most of the time, it was things that I've seen or things that I've witnessed or people that are close to me that dealt with. And I can use that as inspiration because it technically touches me and it has something to do with me, you know?
You see, like, even coming up in a suburban area, I'm still very in tune with like the street dudes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I never wanted to be them.
Nope. At a point I did, I'm lying. But I grew up.
When you're young, you're like, I guess you find it to be like edgy and
Yeah.
you know, and you're like intrigued by it, but like, is it worth actually like experiencing that shit? Like they don't want to experience that shit.
And they say it all the time, I did not want to experience it. It's just the life I was given and that's what I had to work
like
with.
they're trying to work with something. Like,
Yeah.
but they didn't want to experience it. So like to turn around and be from like a suburban area and try to reenact everything that they're doing, it's funny. It's like, bro, like you're doing something that no one wants to do.
And it's even funnier when you can think that, even if you are like a suburban kid and you're rapping, sometimes, like you said earlier, like your story could be something that's way more relatable than you trying to act because that's what you have a perception that rap is. Like your story may be so much more relatable to a lot of other listeners out there that they're not in the streets.
Well,
they're in the suburbs.
That took a long time for me to understand. Like my personal story
Mhm.
what I went through with my father having epilepsy and having seizures all the time, and my brother, you know, learning disabilities, like what I had to endure as a child, I think that it took me a long time to realize, like, oh shit, like you have a story as well.
Mm-hmm.
And your story is also very compelling. It's not shooting people
It doesn't fit the
in the
mold
streets.
of rap.
It's not the hood shit, but
it's a story.
It's a story. And like people are enticed by an intriguing story,
Mhm.
a relatable story. It could just be something that's like, holy shit, like that's wild,
Mhm.
you know. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the street shit. So like, I turn that to like the artist who's sitting at home, and you know, maybe you don't come from like a crazy background, and maybe you didn't have like a crazy story. Like, you have to find something that's enticing to write about, and you have to make it you. You can't, you know, like I'm on the fence with people writing about fictional stuff
Mhm.
because hip hop has never really allowed that.
Yeah.
You know, so like you in one way have to find a way to like bring it back to you. But I'm also not stupid, and I also know that like half the artists that write about shooting people and doing all this dumb shit didn't actually do that.
Yeah, you got to stretch the truth sometimes when it
But
comes to rap.
sometimes it's not even stretching the truth. Sometimes it's like legit, just
A
all
blatant lie,
fabricated.
like when you think of something like the 6ix9ine thing, like
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like there's all these there, and 6ix9ine is not the first person.
definitely not.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many artists who got through the industry. We talked about it on a past episode, like 50. I get high all the time,
Never drunk or smoked.
knowing that he doesn't do that at all.
Mhm.
Like, you know, people have been fabricating a story since the beginning of time. You know, and I don't think it's bad to write in the perspective of someone that you imagined, because I've done the same thing. But usually I do it with like love
Mhm.
scenarios. I'll write a love song, and it might not be a situation that happened directly to me.
Mhm.
Maybe it's close to like someone I've seen experience it, and I'll write a song. So I'm not saying that everything that you write has to be directly connected with you. You know, it's possible to write other stuff, but I do think that there should be some of your story in your music if you plan to have a career in writing music.
And that was one of the things that we even discussed when it came to when we started working together. Cause like I had like a lot of songs where it was, in a sense, it was kind of me, but at the same time, it really wasn't. It was kind of me pulling for a sound or to like grab the listener's ear, kind of something that they were familiar to. And the more and more I started writing more songs, and I just started, you know, instead of thinking of what somebody else may wanted to hear, I started thinking of how I feel inside and what my thought process is. My music was it was more relatable, and it just did better. It just sounded better. It was just everything was just connecting.
And maybe music is not a therapeutic process for everyone, because I honestly think, I was thinking about this earlier, like I feel like, and I don't want to sound like an old head, and I don't want to discredit kids in this game and young people coming up, but like I feel like there was more of an attachment to hip hop culture with people in our age group.
Mhm.
I feel like we didn't just want to be rappers because like, oh, the flashy lifestyle. It's like hip hop was an actual lifestyle that we gravitated toward, and it brought mad people together.
Yeah, it definitely
Right?
did.
And like my friends are hip hop heads.
Mhm.
Like all my friends are hip hop heads, you know, and it was just that hip hop, like the culture around it
Mhm.
was the intriguing part. That's what brought me in. It's like gang culture to some people.
Yeah,
They see it as a youth, and they go, I want to be that,
'cause
right?
they
Like
almost got me.
I didn't want to be in a gang. We had opportunities to be in
Mhm.
gangs, like everyone does.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like I wanted to be in hip hop. Like it was just a culture that I felt connected me. Like when I say that I don't feel like the youth is as attached, like I don't think that I was taught more lessons by any human being in a physical sense
Mhm.
than I was by hip hop.
Yeah, like a lot of artists kind of, I don't want to say they completely, you know, made my mind the way it is, but I was listening to a lot of hip hop, so it definitely.
No, rappers raised me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
That's what I was
legit
getting
raised
at.
me.
Yeah.
Like I, bro, and that's why it's hard for me to like. There's been times in my life where I wanted to just completely stop doing music.
Mhm.
Like, yo, what are you doing? You're wasting your money. You're wasting time. You're wasting effort. Like, you could be putting this into something else.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like I feel such a strong connection because I feel like for everything hip hop did for me,
Yeah, you can't run away from it.
I can't run from it. It's just
Exactly.
that thing that's always going to be there.
I even had a line before, like this is a trash song, but I remember the line because I was talking about basically like my father being absent in my life, right? And I basically said something along the lines like, I have a father, I only had Big Papa who told me fuck hoes, never taught me to be proper. And it was just like you said, like it really raised me. Like it was like when you don't have like a male figure in your life for the most part, you start idolizing or you just start looking to these rappers for information, whatever the case may be, and how they think. And then you start realizing, like, oh shit, this person just raised me and taught me something. And there's always a distinction though, but where it becomes, all right, I think I've always had an eye for what seems more realistic and what just seems like the fabricated portion. Because there's once again, when it comes to rapping, there's always that fabrication portion. It's just that can you really hit this fucking word again? Differentiate. There we go.
There you go.
Can you differentiate what's fact and what's fiction? Sometimes it's hard for a lot of people to really understand what's the difference. But for the most part, I think that was another thing that kind of helped me or helped hip hop like kind of grow me as a person and as a man. But at the same time, understanding that all the guns and shooting stuff, it wasn't necessarily true. But there was still some value to it at some extent or some point.
I don't even think that the problem necessarily lies in like always fabricating. I also think that there's a part of your life, like when I was 17, 18, and I'm writing music, like everything's about fucking bitches.
Fucking bitches getting
and everything's
money.
about partying and everything's about doing all this shit. And truth be told, that was the lifestyle I was living at that point. That's all I was focused on.
I ain't had no hoes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I used to party all the time. I used to try to get with every chick that lived. Like, that was my lifestyle. So what I was writing about was true to
Which was
myself.
going through,
It
yeah.
just wasn't dope. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes your story is just not dope.
And sometimes you got to experience life a little bit more.
Or exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe not your story necessarily, because you're not giving your story.
Exactly.
You're telling about all the material things that are around you, and that's why it's not dope. Because you're not speaking about what's real. Right? And I'm not saying that everyone has to come out and they have to tell every fucking dark secret that they've ever like experienced and all their traumas. But what I am saying is that, it's easier to write a good song when it comes from a real place and when it's actually interesting. Like me fucking a bitch, like that'll never be interesting to a stranger.
And to add to that, I hated J. Cole. Well, J. Cole's my favorite rapper at this point. I hated him, right? For that Who Dat song. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? This shit is trash. I didn't turn around to J. Cole until I heard Lost Ones. And it was like, okay, I've heard about everybody talking about they've been fucking some bitches, but this was a whole different perspective for me that I never actually went through, but from hearing the song, it kind of put me in that situation. As I got older, I kind of did go through that situation. So I even loved the song a little bit more from that. But it was a different way of writing. Like, okay, you got this bitch pregnant, but now you're talking about the real life stuff. The dude wants to be kind of out of the picture, even though he fucked her raw. And now she's, he gave her perspective. And it was like, that's what brought me to him. And then I don't know if he experienced it or not, but it felt like a real story to me. It felt like something that people actually go through. And it resonated with me just because of that. And it just, once again, it didn't happen to me back then. But when it happened to me when I was older, I was like, oh shit, this shit is even way, way more relatable back then. But now I know why the true feeling happened, like why I got connected to that way of like writing, that style of music.
See, but hip hop is so cold that like, whether you're the guy who fucks 100 bitches early on, or you're the guy who gets no bitches whatsoever, there's a place for you to write about that.
Exactly.
Because there's always going to be someone that feels like you.
Exactly.
There's always going to be someone that attaches themselves to you. Like what you're experiencing, you're not the only person that'll ever experience it. You're not the only person that's experiencing it at the moment. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone's connected in some way or another. So hip hop allows everyone to kind of be their true self. And I think that it's not that maybe when we were younger, we thought that like you had to be a certain way in hip hop. And maybe it's not that you have to be a certain way. Maybe it's that we were scared to be that way.
Yeah, because it was unheard of, like we talked about before, like until like Kanye started just like, all right, whatever, I'm wearing a backpack, I'm a college rapper, who cares? Or I'm wearing these polos.
You didn't want to get clowned.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you were
had
scared.
to be hard. You had to, fit the image. You had to rap how everybody else was rapping. But, now it's a little bit more leniency. Well, I'm not going to say a little bit. It's a lot more leniency than it was back then for the most part.
Yes and no, because like I feel like there's still a trend of artists trying to copy and paste everything. Like I feel like there's still a bunch of like, just like we were trying to sound like the people back then and trying to fit in. Like
Oh yeah,
you
that
could
has
kind of
gone away.
attach it. You could attach it to the kids who are rapping about doing pills on every single song, and they probably don't do that shit.
That's true.
It's the
And that
same.
happens a
It's the
lot too.
same thing. It's just that that thug mentality shit that we grew up with
Mhm.
is now a drug mentality.
Yeah, there definitely has been a change of culture.
You know what I'm
within
saying?
that.
Like
Yeah.
we were like we came up on the dealers and like the tough guy,
Mhm.
and they're coming up on like the soft person and the drug, I guess drug abuser
Yeah,
rather than dealer,
they want to be the drug dealer and the drug abuser at the same time,
right?
and it's like it's kind of confusing.
And we came up on like Biggie 10 Crack Commandments that said that was not what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
So like our manual to life was different than their manual, where everyone's talking about I pop a perk and then I do this.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so when you first started writing in your own perspective and voice, that was 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Have you found that to be a therapeutic process for you?
Yeah, it definitely has. Like even like the recent song I did, Acting Different, like that was like the first time I've actually written a real story about my life and like put myself like fully into it. Like that whole song front to back was like me trying to let somebody else see through my eyes in a sense or go through my brain of what happened. And even though they may not know how these people may look, they probably can be able to like have a picture of it because that's how I seen it. And it was like to this day, I think that may be like the most me song ever, or like me sharing a story of myself. And it's like I want to go back into doing more things like that. And like even when I wrote Rent Through, it was like I was thinking about myself, like I gotta go back to fucking work. I gotta do all this stupid shit. And it's for the most part, it's just so I could pay rent and make sure that I got like a house over my head. And that's what I was really experiencing. That's what I was going through. And that's where those songs came from. And it just like once it resonates with more people, it's like, yeah, we all fucking hate kind of working and we just doing it because we gotta just pay our rent. And it's like more natural things about what's going on in my mind and how I feel. And I'm projecting that into the songs. And they've been just doing amazing since then.
What does it take for Bailz to sit down and write a song? Like, what's your actual process? How does that work for you?
I literally only write music for the most part when I'm driving in my car. So if I'm not commuting, I'm not writing any music, which is the weirdest shit ever. But that's just kind of how I've always written music, like traveling. Like when I was going to college or high school, when I'm on the bus, I got my headphones on and I'm writing. Like that was it's like traveling is my time to write music. Whenever I'm in it, I probably won't listen to anybody else's music. I'll probably just listen to the beats and writing songs. So like traveling is the only time I really write music, which is kind of weird because I know I could be doing more, but I like traveling and writing music.
See, I like being at the studio by myself, playing the beat on the bigs, locking in, and just kind of getting to it. I would say that I feel like over the past 3 or 4 years, I've probably written the best music of my life.
This guy got a buttload of music too. Was it a boatload?
A buttload.
He has a boatload of music. As the engineer guy. Don't let this guy fool you. He's a rapper.
But nah, just being able to sit there with the speakers playing and get into my own zone, make myself a coffee, relax, stay alert. And also, something we talked about before the episode aired, rhyme zone.
Rhyme zone.
So there was this thing back in the day that people would feel like you were, like a phony if you had any type of help in writing a song. And those people are, first off, those people are just like, they're just wrong because like if you're signed to a label,
You got some writers.
and you're in the studio with people, there's people throwing you ideas.
All
That's
the
just
time.
that's just how it happens.
Yep.
Right. So like whether you're taking the help from online or you're taking it from an actual person physically, I think that online is that's a better option if you're trying to claim like best rapper ever and trying to keep it to yourself, right? So there's a website called rhymezone.com. And I used to suffer from writer's block at times. And before a rhyme zone, when you had writer's block, you just had writer's block.
Yep.
And there was nothing you could
just
do about
sitting
it.
there tight.
And you had that line and you were like, I have nowhere to go from here. Right. Then I found Rhyme Zone. And that last word that you're stuck on where you go, what the fuck do I say to this? right? 100 options of words that rhyme with it and their meanings. And
Right there on your lap.
so what's dope is like being able to not only see a list of words, but to be able to like see the actual definition, because that helps you tie it into the whole.
So everything how it makes everything's meaning. And I'm telling you right now, 95 to close to 99% of Bailz' songs have been used with rhyme zone. Whether it been one word, whether it been 7 lines, 8 lines, or like the ending, I'm going to rhyme zone. Best believe I'm going to rhyme zone.
Rhyme zone has become part of my regular process. If I get stuck, I don't deal with writer's block anymore. I'm not going to sit there for an hour and try to ponder a line. I'm going to rhyme zone. I'm getting that word. And then usually once I get that word, the rest just flows out.
It just flows instantly.
So it was like a 10-second process to find one word, and now the rest of the song can come with it.
It just flows naturally.
Instead of sitting there like a dummy and just being angry
Getting
or like
upset.
yeah,
because it happens. That's
mad
shit.
for like an hour. You know,
it sometimes happens to me sometimes too when I still can't think of like the concept of how I want to attack the beat. So like you can't go on like Google and like try to help that. At that point, you know, you got to just really sit there and try to figure it out. But if I'm stuck on a word, man, rhyme zone, and then I'll try to find a word that may be similar, or like, you know what, if I say this word in this way, it may just kind of sound like it rhymes, so it could still slide. And then you get into that whole thing with the bar structure, how you can like switch in the middle of words and everything of that nature. But yeah, use them tools, man.
Also, another tip that I don't think that a lot of people talk about is sometimes when you get writer's block, all you need to do is get up and walk. Just walk outside for a second. Just do something. Do something different than just working on the song. Because sometimes your brain is just exhausted and of thinking. You know what I mean? And all you need is that little 5-minute break. So if you could take a 5-minute walk around the block and come back, it might flow better. You know, for me as a smoker in the past, smoking cigarettes and now smoking this little fucking vapey bullshit, but like, you know, back in the day when I would take a little cigarette break, it gave me that time to kind
clarity. And finally figure out what's
exactly
going on.
Ponder what I was gonna say next or what I was gonna do. And a lot of the time, like a lot of lines came from those cigarette breaks.
And shit, I'm thinking about it now. Like, you know, you would normally do that. For me, whenever I have writer's block, I'll just turn on the beat and just start saying random shit. And I will mumble and just mumble, and probably say like 1 or 2 words. And I would just continuously do that on a beat until I feel like I have a flow. Because once you have the flow down, all you got to do is just find the words and just put it in. And like, you know, I will record myself mumbling certain things. And then I'll listen to it. I'll get the flow of it. And then I'll just input words. Use rhyme zone and just start inputting words. And that's kind of how I've always kind of written my songs. Just mumble shit. I think Saba said he does that too. You just mumble shit and then just put the words in later.
As a reference, a lot of people do that. For me, I think that because I'm always trying to like have double meanings and shit, and I'm always trying to like have really intricate lines, whether they sound like it or not. You know, I think that one of the things I'm really good at is saying something that sounds like it is what it is at face value. But then you think about it and you're like, oh shit.
I love them lines.
That could have meant this.
I love that music.
You know, so like when I get writer's block is because I might have the next line and it might be something like that I feel like, nah.
You could be your worst enemy when it comes to writing sometimes.
You know what I mean?
Too.
Like, I don't think that that's the one that's going to like really do it for me.
Because sometimes being simple could be the best thing, but sometimes you just don't feel like
I like simplicity, but I also like it in the form of like, it sounds simple.
But it still got to have some, like, it got to hit.
But there's something behind there that you haven't figured out yet. You know what I mean? That's what I try to go for.
What was that Nelson Aguilar line you had to explain to me that time? Hey, I'm hoping I just do like a whole...
Bitch catching babies like she hating Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, and it seemed regular to me, but until you broke that shit down to me, I was like, oh shit, that's fucking fire. Because then you had it kind of remind me of the reference of the dude in the video. So
shit like that, where like that connects in my brain in 2 seconds, and to explain it to someone, it would be like a 5-minute. Yo, so you remember that video of the dude on the news that was saying that like he was catching babies out the window, not like Nelson Aguilar, like. And I think that that's also a turnoff for some people, that don't necessarily want to think that deeply when they're listening to music?
That's the only thing I listen to music for. If I don't have anything where it just like it catches me and I'm like, oh shit, what the fuck? Or like even if it goes over my head and I look at the lyrics, I'm like, oh, that's what I love music for. Honestly, that's the only thing I look for in my music.
Camera went off. I think that this discussion could actually go for another episode. So you wanna continue this on part 2?
Yeah, definitely go to
All
part
right, cool
2.
guys. Rappers Guide Podcast. We are signing out. This is Diggy Metro,
Bailz Pagliacci.
and we will see you next week.